Okay, I'm gonna try to stop caring what I look like on the camera and just talk, because that's why I'm here. So I had an interesting discussion with my mom about the whole situation with YU, and I'm still trying to fully process what she said. She said to me that she's not worried about the students' well-being, and I was very shocked because, that's something that I'm deeply concerned about. But she said, this club has existed with opposition, without official recognition by Yeshiva University and Stern College for 9 years, and there are adults in the community who care, and no matter what, they know that they matter and that they are important and that they're going to be okay. Which I want to agree with. I just don't know. I know, as someone who has not attended these academic institutions, I'm hurt by it. So I can only begin to imagine what it must feel like to go to a school where the administration makes it clear that they don't want you. And what's bizarre to me is that I've had family members say to me in response to this whole situation, well, if they knew they weren't going to be accepted, why didn't they just go somewhere else? Which could be a fair question, but I don't think it's a fair question here. Because when you grow up in an Orthodox community, that's your life. There's no kind of branching out from that. It's you're in it, or you're tiptoeing on the outside, or you can only manage that for so long till you're out. It's one thing to go to a school that only serves meat, only serves fleishik, and you're a vegan, but you can't live your vegan lifestyle there. If I were to say to you, well, then just don't go to this carnivore school, that's reasonable. But being vegan is a choice. It's not the same thing. Being gay and being Jewish, being queer and being Jewish, being trans and being Jewish, they're not diametrically opposed things. They're not opposites, and you can be both. A person's queerness does not affect their ability to uphold the values of Torah, and it does not affect a person's ability to, observe mitzvot. Is there one mitzvah that they may not be able to do? Maybe a handful of them? Yeah. Is there a lo taseh that they might transgress? Yeah, but whose business is that? Like, whose business is that? It certainly isn't mine. There's a few issues that this whole situation goes into. Base level is it against the Torah to be gay? And the answer is no. Could you argue that it is against the Torah to do certain acts? Yeah, there's definitely a place for that opinion. Just because that's your opinion doesn't mean that that's everyone else's opinion, and it doesn't mean that it's the be-all, end-all. Anyone who graduated from a Jewish day school worth their salt would know that there's this concept of there being shivim panim l'Torah, 70 faces to the Torah, meaning 70 interpretations, and 70 is the number that is used to connote a long span of time, a large number of so on and so forth. It is beautiful that some people feel so strongly about their interpretations of certain psukim in Torah, certain verses. That's great. That's wonderful. It's beautiful. So glad you feel so passionate about it. That doesn't mean that everyone agrees with you. Even great rabbis would argue with each other back and forth and disagree with each other. But the one thing that comes before everything in the Torah is a person's well-being and a person's life. We know from practices like the whole process of mourning of Avelut, the Torah is deeply invested in a person's well-being emotionally, spiritually, and physically. At the end of the day, well-being is the top priority. If you are going to come forward and say that you are a religious Jew and that you would rather put more restrictions on other people that could potentially cause them emotional and mental harm, you would rather do that than appear to allow people to conduct themselves in a way that you feel is not in line with Torah values. I don't get it. I don't get how you can say something like that. If a person passes in between two cities and no one knows who this person is or what happened, it is the obligation of the city that it is closest to prepare the burial and to give that person the proper kavod, the proper respect. If that's how we treat others that we don't even know when they're no longer with us, what does that say about how we're supposed to treat people that we don't know who don't belong to a specific community while they're still alive? We want to prevent that situation from ever happening. In my opinion, the responsibility is not on the individual to shrink down or to adjust themselves to make the rest of the community comfortable. It is the community's responsibility to ensure that this person who has done nothing wrong, and the only thing that they have done that may seem wrong in the eyes of others, is that God created them in a way that God did not create the rest of the community. You can say that that's ridiculous and that it's unfair that a community assume responsibility for something like that, but I'm gonna have to disagree with you. Every single Jew is responsible for every single other Jew. If there is a Jewish person in crisis, it is your obligation as a Jewish person to help them. Lo tamod al dam re'echa, don't be a bystander. It feels ridiculous to me that someone has to say that out loud. When it comes to something like this, it is very possible that your fellow Jews who are also queer don't feel welcome and don't feel safe. Whether they don't feel safe physically, emotionally, or mentally, or they feel that there is no room for them in a religious community because of something that they cannot change about themselves that has nothing to do with whether or not they're a good person, whether or not they keep kosher or keep Shabbat, or give to the poor, or welcome others into their home, or visit the sick. Being gay has nothing to do with any of those things. Any of them. So, to anyone who's willing to throw out the baby with the bathwater, why? I don't believe it's against the Torah to be gay. I really don't. I don't believe that it is against the Torah to be trans. I don't believe that it is against the Torah to be a part of the LGBTQ plus community. None of that affects a person's ability to follow the Torah. And to people who would say that, well, there's so many queer Jews who aren't religious, that's how they end up anyway. Why? Why are they like that? Is it because they grew up in a community that they didn't feel welcome in? And so they found another community that was warm and accepting? They did not feel that they could return to the Jewish community that they were raised in, whether they tell themselves that or their communities have explicitly told them that, because it's easier to leave. It's easier to walk away when there's no one holding you there, telling you that they want you there, telling you that you matter and that your voice is important and that you're their peer, you're their equal. When there's no one telling you that, why would you stay? And I'm not advocating for people to leave the Jewish community. I'm not advocating for people to leave their religious community. I'm not advocating for that. In my eyes, from a Torah value perspective, spent years learning Torah, I continue to learn Torah and live a life that celebrates my Judaism and my religion and my heritage. In my opinion, it is morally reprehensible to not include someone in your community, especially if it is a child. We're talking about the future leaders of the Jewish people, of Bnei Israel, Am Yisrael. We're talking about the people who we want to carry on our Jewish legacy and heritage. This is a chain that has gone through history for over 2,000 years. And to kick someone out and to tell them that they don't get to pass on that heritage, they don't get to be a part of what their ancestors lived and breathed and died for. It's embarrassing and it's shameful. You can have your opinions, but at the end of the day, it is no one else's business. It is not affecting you. It is not affecting me. If I'm an outsider, it does not affect me. There's a Gemara in Brachot that's talking about how these great rabbis wanted to learn Torah from their teachers and emulate every single thing that they do, because everything they do is Torah and everything they do is holy and they can learn from absolutely everything they do. Rabbi Akiva observes his Rebbe in the bathroom on how to conduct himself, which is weird, but his response is, it's Torah and I must learn. Another story, Rav Kahana is a student of Rav and wants to learn as much from him as possible. So he hides under Rav's bed and waits. So Rav Kahana entered and lay beneath Rav's bed. He heard Rav chatting and laughing with his wife and seeing to his needs, doing the deed. Rav Kahana said to Rav, The mouth of Abba, or Rav, is like one who has never eaten a cooked dish, i.e. his behavior is lustful. Rav said to him, Kahana, you are here, leave, as this is an undesirable mode of behavior. And he responded, it is Torah, and I must learn. Now, if you're uncomfortable with the first story, you should also be uncomfortable with the second story. There are a few things you could take away from that story. One being, watch out because your students are watching you do everything, and living a Torah lifestyle doesn't start when you walk into the Beit Midrash and end when you walk out. It is your whole life. Another is boundaries. Boundaries are very important, but I think the most important thing is Rav's response to Rav Kahana saying, what are you doing here? Get out. This is not for you. There are certain things in our lives that belong to us and our partners and God. They do not belong to anyone else in the community. They do not belong to strangers online. They do not belong to school administrators. They do not belong to fellow students. They do not involve anyone but yourself, your partner, and God. Basically what I'm saying, in the words of Rav, mind your business. The world is a rough place as it is. It's rough for Jews. It's rough for queer people. It's rough for everyone. Why? Why would it be in anyone's best interest to make another person feel worse? And to make another person feel more left out and more isolated and lonely, given the current condition of the world? If anything, what the Jewish community needs are religious leaders and educators who will proudly step forward and publicly express their love and appreciation for every member of their community, every member of their community. Can you imagine the positive effect that it will have on young queer Jews who are sitting in shul next to their parents to hear a rabbi say that they belong and that they matter and that they are a part of the community and that how God made them is not a defect, and it's not something to be ashamed of, and it's not wrong. God didn't make you wrong. Imagine the positive effect that could have. Imagine the great ideas that are going to come forth from these young Jews who are going to feel so welcome and loved by their community, regardless of who they love and who they choose to be with for the rest of their lives, because they're going to continue to build a Beit Ne'eman B'Yisrael. They're going to raise their children Jewish. They are going to be active members of their Jewish community and strengthen the community emotionally and physically and spiritually. And why would you want to miss out on that? Why are you willingly turning people away? Young people who all they did was be born as they are, as God made them. I'm honestly scared to know some of the stances of my own teachers and rabbis on what it means to be queer and Jewish, because I don't want to feel isolated and excluded from my own community. But I choose to believe that these same teachers that taught me, values of loving everyone and being responsible for your fellow Jews and just your fellow people in general, that they would agree with me. And I really, really hope that these support systems like Jewish Queer Youth and Eshel continue to thrive to the point where they're just institutions in our Jewish communities. And those are basic rules of decency that we hold ourselves to. I know that I matter, and I know that God didn't make me wrong. And every Jew should have the right to feel the same.